Today, we'll be reading The Yellow Star, The Legend of King Christian X of Denmark, and it is by Carmen Agra Didi. We already know a little bit about King Christian, and this book, even though it's fictional, a fictional picture book, it's a historical fiction. They're going to use parts from history that were actually true, very similar to how Number the Stars does. Now you have 3 questions you're looking out for. We just read them in class. I'm going to read them one more time so they're fresh on your mind. And if you're at home, be thinking about these questions in the back of your mind as well, because you'll respond to them on Seesaw after. So number 1 said, why was the king able to ride without a bodyguard? Number 2, how does King Christian remain defiant against the Nazis even after they take over Denmark? That word defiant means you stand up against someone. And number 3, what does the author mean when she writes, there were only Danes? Show what you're going to do if we spot the answer to any of those questions. Perfect. We use a silent hand on our head to show you spotted it. And you can use that at home so that you're listening as well for those answers. The Yellow Star. And here on the title page, there's a picture of King Christian on his horse. Call out if you remember from Number the Stars the name of the horse, so you can call it out. Jubilee. Jubilee was his horse. So I'll do my best to hold up the pictures. I'm just going to read first and then hold it up. Early in the year 1940, in the country of Denmark, there were only Danes. Well, I already see some hands going on your head. Excellent, ladies. We're already noticing this phrase, right? There were only Danes. Let's keep reading to see if that phrase changes meaning throughout the story. But I'm so glad you noticed that on the first page. Tall Danes, stout Danes, old Danes, silly Danes, cranky Danes, and even some Great Danes. And that's a joke because that's a type of dog called a Great Dane. But no matter how different from each other they seemed, the Danes held one thing in common. All were loyal subjects of the beloved King Christian. So you see here all sorts of different people, but what connects them is that they all live in Denmark. Every morning, their king rode alone and unarmed along the streets of Denmark's capital, which you know the capital is Copenhagen. Who's that? A curious visitor once asked. Why, that's our king, Christian, his Danish host responded. Without a bodyguard? Asked the astonished guest. My friend, came the proud reply, a king so loved needs no bodyguard. We Danes would all stand together in defense of our king. Little did the Danes know how much they would need their wise king in the dark days to come. When I'm looking around, I see a lot of hands on your head. What question did we answer, Sia?
We answered, why was the king able to ride without a bodyguard? Because the boy said he was about to ride without a bodyguard. All Denmark was his bodyguard.
Beautiful. So Sia is saying we figured out the king's able to ride without a bodyguard because all of Denmark is his bodyguard. So Sia's using words we heard in Number the Stars. In this, it also said that a king who is so loved needs no bodyguard. So people really cared about King Christian. Like a fierce storm, ooh, good simile spotting, that was a simile, war was spreading across Europe, and even good King Christian was powerless to stop it. Soon, Nazi soldiers gathered like dark clouds at the Danish borders. Their arrival in Copenhagen brought food shortages, curfews, and a new flag which hung at the palace. The flag stood for war and fear and hatred. The Danes watched and waited to see what their king would do. King Christian sent a Danish soldier to remove the flag. So here's the palace, or the king's, where the king lives, his palace in Copenhagen. And we've looked at this before in class, but if you're at home, maybe you haven't seen it before. The Nazi flag is on top because the Germans have taken over, and it has a symbol known as a swastika, which was the symbol that the Nazis used. So it's a horrible symbol that represents the evil of the Nazis who did so many horrific things to the world. But at that time, the flag was up. And what did King Christian do? Quinn? Yes. Is that a little bit defiant of him? Right? So even though he's not fighting the Germans because his army's not strong enough, he's at least taking the flag down. Let's see what he does next. Upon discovering that it was missing, a Nazi officer demanded to see the king and asked, "Who took down the flag?" "I sent a soldier to remove it," replied the king. "Oh, you did you? Well, tomorrow another will fly in its place," the officer boasted. "Well, then tomorrow I will send another soldier to remove it," countered the king. "And I will have that man shot," threatened the Nazi. Leaning forward, King Christian said evenly, "Then be prepared to shoot the king, for I will be that soldier." The Nazi flag did not fly in the palace again. Grace, what are you noticing?
Well, I just think that that's how we know that the king is loyal.
The king is being really loyal to Denmark. He said he would give up his own life. Yes, he was brave enough to really stand up to the Nazi soldier saying, "I'll go take down the flag." And in reality, they wouldn't shoot the king because that would be a much bigger deal. I mean, obviously it's a big deal if they had shot anyone, but he's basically saying, "I'll do it myself then," and they can't argue with that. Let's keep reading, Shallow. I promise I'll give some time for questions and comments after. The missing flag became a powerful symbol of resistance, and King Christian's subjects found reasons to pass the palace gates to see where it once hung. Yes, it was only a small victory, but the king and his people's greatest test was still to come. And you see the people being very proud of their king. Little movement of resistance, which we've read a lot about in Number of the Stars, right? The terrible news arrived quietly with leaflets that fluttered down on the city of Copenhagen. Effective immediately, all Jews must sew onto their clothing a yellow star, which must be visible at all times. So here's that sign, and we see again the swastika on there. That's the Nazi symbol, so we know it's a German sign. And then the people are reading it, and they're nervous that now all Jews have to wear a yellow star. Did that sign remind you of anything in Number the Stars, Sophia? Oh, okay. So we're connecting it to the Star of David, but actually this would be a different star. The Star of David was a symbol of their Judaism, but sorry, this sign right here, did it remind you of anything they came across in Number the Stars, Shallow? I'm thinking of a specific scene where Ellen and Anne Marie discovered something. Riley? At the button shop, remember there was a sign on the door there? This notice is kind of reminding me of when they closed down Mrs. Hirsch's button shop. We're just going to keep reading so we have enough time. The people of Denmark were frightened. They had heard terrible stories. In some places, once Jews wore the yellow star, they were taken away and not heard from again. As before, the people looked to their king. And so we've talked a little bit about how sadly at that time, the Nazis were arresting Jewish people and sending them to what we now call concentration camps. So this is an illustration of one of those scenes. And you can see all these people were forced to wear the yellow star, and that way the Nazis would know who to arrest. So there's some good ideas girls are saying if they hid, maybe they could help it. Let's see what else the King Christian comes up with. This time, their king was as frightened as his people. Without the yellow star to point them out, the Jews looked like any other Danes. Gentiles and Jews were all Danish subjects who worshiped God in different ways. But if Christian called on the tiny Danish army to fight, many Danes would die. If he did nothing, many Danes would die. So he has this horrible dilemma on his hand. He knows their army's not strong enough to stand up against the Nazis, but he also can't let this happen. He doesn't want all the Jewish Danes to be killed. So let's see what he decides. Perhaps it was this riddle of the yellow star that drew King Christian to his balcony that night. The sky was filled with the light of many stars. If you wish to hide a star, wondered the king to himself, where would you place it? His eyes searched the heavens. Of course, he thought, the answer was so simple. You would hide it among its sisters. And the king summoned his tailor. A tailor is someone who stitches things on clothes or stitches up clothes. So does anyone have a prediction of what the king might do? Regan? Regan said he might give everyone a yellow star so they wouldn't know. Let's keep reading, see if you're right. The tailor arrived and listened to the king's surprising request. We have an hour before I ride at dawn, the king said urgently. Can you complete this task in time? Yes, your highness. I'll begin immediately. The tailor bowed respectfully. And you do understand what this means, the king insisted. I do, your highness, as will all your subjects, he answered with pride. I trust they will, whispered the king, placing as much faith in his Danish subjects as they had placed in him. So here's the king talking to his tailor, and he's about to go on his horse ride the next day because he does that every morning. So if you put down your pencil for now, please. The following morning, the king of Denmark, with courage and defiance, rode alone through Copenhagen. He was dressed in his finest clothing. As they watched him pass, the subjects of King Christian understood what they should do. What do you notice about King Christian's uniform today, Quinn? Yes, he's wearing the yellow star. So that's how he got the word out that everyone should put on the yellow star, just like Regan had predicted. And once again, in the country of Denmark, there were only Danes. Did you hear that line again? Good, see, a good detective work. There were only Danes. That meant that the country was united again. They were going to stand together. Let's see, that's the last line. But there's this cool thing called an author's note, and this is where they explain a little bit about which parts are fiction and which parts are true. So let me read that, and then we'll take more questions and comments, and I'll set you off on your task. So the author's note says legend. Put your pencils down if you're writing, because I just want you to listen to this, please. A traditional story, sometimes popularly regarded as historical, but unauthenticated, a myth. So perhaps this yellow star story is really a legend. We think it might be true, but we're not sure. So Riley and Regan, pencils are down just so you can hear all these words. The story of the yellow star is a legend. It may be disappointing to the reader, as it first was to this author, to learn that there's no proof that the story ever actually occurred. I learned of it as a scrap of a tale told to me by a stranger. Its imagery was so compelling and its humanity so palpable that I wanted to know more, meaning you could like feel and touch it. Over the years, despite collecting various oral versions of the story, researching documents, and works of fiction, most notably Lois Lowry's Number the Stars, she researched there, she researched there. I found only unauthenticated references to King Christian's legendary defiance. And I learned many facts that in their own right were as powerful as the legend itself. So here are the facts. This is what's true. The beloved King of Denmark did indeed ride unescorted and unprotected through the streets of Copenhagen. Stories about the king's support of Danish Jews began to circulate throughout Europe as early as 1943, including his threat to wear the yellow star in solidarity with the Jews. So that part was a fact that he at least did threaten that. And then no Jews within Denmark were forced to wear the yellow star. Among the Nazi-occupied countries, only Denmark rescued the overwhelming majority of its Jews. Over 7,000 Danish Jews were smuggled to Sweden in fishing boats, 12 to 14 people at a time, by a group of Danes called the Helsingør Sewing Club. So that must have been like a cover for the resistance. And of almost 500 Jews deported to Theresienstadt, all but 51 survived, due in large part to the Danish government's intercession on their behalf. Yet the legend only goes stronger. Why? Perhaps because we need it. The yellow star was used by the Nazis to divide and shame people, but it became in this legend a symbol of unity and hope. It's a story that should be told. What if it had happened? What if every Dane had worn the yellow Star of David? You were right about that before, whoever said the Star of David. And what if we could follow the example today against violations of human rights? What if good and strong people of the world stood shoulder to shoulder, crowding the streets and filling the squares, saying, you cannot do this injustice to our sisters and our brothers, or you must do it to us as well? What if? So may we remember the legend of the yellow star and try to be upstanders, not bystanders, when there's wrong happening around us.